All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
Fruits Basket, Season 2, Episode 24. Oh, boy.
Penultimate episode of the season.
Yep.
The play was last episode.
It was wonderfully wholesome and sweet and wonderful and a delight. And now I'm just remembering that the second to last episode of Season 1 was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
So... You know, this episode's going to be really positive.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely positive.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to get just good Yuki focus.
That's right.
We're going to kind of round off this season, you know, kind of completing his arc that he's been on since the beginning of the season.
Right, set up the future conflict that will be in Season 3, but not like actually... Like,
right, we don't need that here right now. No. We're still all in school.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Kyo is still in school.
That's right.
That is also a good thing. Things are... you know, in a good place with him and Toru, although things might not be moving necessarily.
Yeah, but that's a very like simple, easy conflict, right? Young love and all that stuff.
Sure.
It's not, you know,
abusive
patriarchs or anything like that.
Yeah. So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion.
Okay.
This was good stuff. We got a light focus on everybody and a good dose of focus on Machi, given that Machi was kind of the last person of the student council to be kind of teased at recently.
Yeah.
And now we have a bit of a stronger understanding that she is absolutely falling for Yuki. She has
makes total sense.
So much for it. Yeah.
Because Having a character who is like the prince archetype, or just the popular one that everyone, like, that literally has a fan club, right? With, you know, litigious rules and everything of engagement with, you know, their Yuki-sama, right?
Right.
Having someone fall for Yuki that is in that school, right? In that sort of same social sphere of things can be very tricky to do and not have it feel like it's just okay, of course they do, right? But no, here we see that Machi sees the change that Yuki has gone through, and maybe because of ways in which they're similar, she noticed it in the first place, because otherwise she might have missed it.
Yeah, and to draw a really important comparison here, the fact that she noticed their similarities before he started to change really is important, because by noticing that when he started to change, those were the things that the other people might not have noticed because they color everything that he does through the prince lens. But for her, she saw the difference and was like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. What is that?
And I love how that's... I feel like this show really likes to focus on the idea of not just people changing, but other people noticing the change and potentially liking that, being made uncomfortable by that, a whole slew of different things.
Sure.
Because, like, we were talking a bit, like, before the discussion of just, like, oh, you know, looking back on the episode, and I feel like Machi's situation with looking at Yuki is potentially similar, even though the people are very different and their responses are very different, to Akito looking at Yuki and how Yuki's changed.
Yeah.
Where, like, she sees a lot of the same issues that Yuki has that she has, right? You know, even down to the issues with the mom, right? And that being this whole... You know,
she has no grid for that. She does have no idea about any of his actual, like, stuff in that regard.
Right. But... You know, so yeah, of course she would then end up being very attracted to him as she sees him change and everything, because that would be something that would be very attractive for her. Yeah. Not necessarily in a romantic sense, but just in a, I want that in my life. And then, you know, as things start to happen and she sees that he really cares about her, even when she doesn't necessarily care about herself, she'll end up falling for him.
That'd do it. That'd do it. I think what's so wonderful about this setup with the student council is they very clearly told us in the very beginning which of the student council were going to be the main characters. And I really like that, because we started off with Manabe and Machi having that moment where the place was trashed and everything, and they were kind of the only two really kind of involved in that thing, but there was this mystery as to why that happened.
Yeah, and why was Manabe not like surprised by it or anything? And
but Manabe has probably noticed as well that Machi has been changing. Yep. And it started when Yuki joined the student council.
Right, because and this is one of the things that I love about this is that if it was strictly that Machi wasn't changing and that she was just seeing Yuki and being like, oh, that's so cool, then theoretically you could get into a similar situation of what Yuki had with Toru, where he thinks very highly of her, but he's not necessarily seeing the true person that's in front of him and more of what they represent to him, right? Sure. But in this case, she has been changing, but because of, how these things go, she doesn't necessarily realize it and certainly wouldn't acknowledge it to herself.
Yeah.
Right? The very fact that her and Yuki were able to get into that spat with the, oh no, it's not the maple leaf, or it could be, that's something that is a bit tropey and it's played up for a gag. But the thing is that the fact that was able to happen shows that she has grown immensely since then, right? Even the fact that she, took the chair and broke open the door when Yuki was having his freak out, right? She's been changing.
Yeah. And seeing the ways in which people have changed, I feel like was the focus of this episode, where we primarily used Yuki as the through line between the two kind of separate storylines outside of the Toru, Kyo, and freaking Kazuma just get together bit, which I wish we had more of.
I wish we had more of too. But even that ties into it though with Rin, because she's been changing too.
Yeah, exactly. So seeing the ways in which everyone has changed, seeing the ways in which we've come back to the start, if you will, by having another New Year's summoning kind of brought everyone together. But in this case now, Rin and Kyo didn't show up this time.
Yep.
So slowly but surely, Toru.
Maybe the curse
is being broken. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, right now, Akito wishes that Yuki hadn't shown up.
I'll bet. Yeah. I'll bet.
There weren't two people that weren't there. If anything, there was at the very least three, and potentially a whole lot more. Because one of the things that I loved about how that whole scene was shot, and I feel like this episode highlighted, so that in no uncertain terms we can understand exactly how Akito is going to be dealt with as the antagonist, villain, etc., or whatever of this show, right? Because obviously it's not going to be any kind of Kyo transforms and then fights Akito or anything like that, right? Everyone's having a great time, and Akito's
chilling with Ayame,
and Akito's there,
completely alone.
But he's completely alone.
Yeah,
he is not a part of this at all. Right?
Yuki's just there as almost like a courtesy of like, yeah, I'll sit next to you so that I can have this conversation that I've wanted to have since I've realized my worth and value as a human being.
Exactly. And like that. It was the most
Akito.
Exactly. if weird analogy, but if this were like a first person shooter, Akito just got like surprise killed and then teabagged. But the thing is that the people aren't even meaning to do it, right? Like he's just like, I've lost. It's slipping away. All the things that I wanted.
Akito got farmed in top lane.
Yeah,
and is just like, well, I just got back here. Can you like give me a second to at least pick up some gold?
This must be everyone else's fault, Yeah.
Clearly, the team is feeding and making the other team.
Why didn't you adjust?
Yeah. So the fact that Akito lashes out in this way, in some ways, is probably the first time I'm actually glad Akito lashed out. Because it's an also way of reinforcing that Yuki is right to make this choice.
Yep.
And that also Kureno, thank you for immediately stepping in and be like, no,
right.
Stop that. Stop.
Because I will say the entire, all the way up till now in the show, the part that made me the most uncomfortable about the things that Akito did wasn't the fact that he did them, but it was the lack of responses I would seem to see from the people around him. And so Kureno being like, immediately going in to stop him, and then afterwards even apologizing, being like, sorry I didn't step in sooner. Like, because he was getting that sense, but,
Right, and also Kureno was very much listening in on every aspect of their conversation. And it's interesting because Kureno is also one of the, he's the new attaché to Akito, but is much older than Yuki as well. So there's that little bit of like, maybe if I had, clued into this a little bit.
And there might be some backstory past stuff that we're going to get into with
that was
Akito and Kureno, because
that was a flashback to a younger Kureno.
It certainly looked like, and if Akito was saying don't go, that's interesting, because Kureno definitely doesn't go now, right? He stays right near Akito whenever he needs him, and even when he doesn't.
And could this be a thing where Yuki, when Yuki would have been, I guess, really young, had a time where maybe he wasn't able to be there for Akito?
Yeah, like before he became Akito's playmate or whatever.
Well, no. I'm meaning more like in the vein of like Yuki has a moment where he's like inconsolable because he's scared of Akito or something like that because of Akito's abrupt.
Sure. Akito broke his toy basically.
Yeah, just becoming erratic and stuff. Then they pull Yuki away, and Kureno needs to be there or something.
It's the kind of
I'm trying to timeline this because the uniform that the totally looked like Kureno person was wearing.
And the thing is that kind of flashback from like its place in the narrative, that seems like the kind of thing where it's like this is one of the big moments for Akito that helps turn him into the person that he is now, that was a critical moment where there was a shift, right?
Yeah.
And that's why he thinks of it,
Right.
But I wouldn't expect that to be something that would involve Kureno. Like Kureno, his relationship with Akito, he feels new, and he feels like the relationship between the two feels sterile.
There's nothing really to it.
Right. And not that and I would say that that's different from the relationship with Yuki, because even if that's something that's negative, it's very strongly negative. Whereas Akito and Kureno, it feels like just
I'm
sort
clocking in time.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
like
not here because
super
I want
neutral.
to.
Akito doesn't really care about the fact that Kureno's there, other than the fact that he's putting in the hours because you need to. Because
I'm here just so I don't get fined.
Right, exactly. And Akito is fine with that as long as he shows up, right?
Right.
But he doesn't seem to give him any special attention, really.
Yeah, so that flashback was weird. Unless it's just not Kureno.
Unless it's not Kureno, or maybe it's something where, because of things that happened in the past, in Akito's mind, Kureno is there to sort of like be one of his people to comfort him when he's not feeling good, kind of like how he expects Shigure to kind of do that. And
right, so in the context of what was going on at that moment there, everyone's, they had just done the dance thing, Hattori is looking sexy, and then when Yuki basically gives the truth is, I'll keep trying to shift the blame. If I keep trying to shift the blame, then I'll never change.
Right.
I like this that Yuki is framed in the light and Akito has the shadow.
Yeah. And Yuki is not at all looking at Akito, but Akito is like hanging on his every word. Yeah.
But then it's interesting here because Akito goes, "What?" And goes, "What is that look in your eyes?"
Right.
But it almost is like Akito's not even really looking at Yuki, because Yuki is looking not even at Akito here. So, like, the way in which Akito would need to make some kind of judgment about the look in his eyes.
Yeah, like he says that after Yuki turns to him. It feels like, and when Akito's looking at him, so there was a point when they weren't showing Akito's face for a good amount of time. And right as they were about to show his face, I was like, I want to see Akito's face, right? Because I was expecting his expression to be like livid. Right, where he's just like, "How dare you?" But the thing is that while he did end up flipping out and hitting Yuki with the vase, at the beginning he looked curious to me. He looked like
he's like, "Oh, Yuki's opening up to me?
Oh, that's new." And that there seemed to be something genuine in his attentiveness to Yuki that went beyond just the "you're my subject," right? Like he looked legitimately intrigued by what Yuki was saying.
You know what I think it is?
What?
I think it's that Yuki being vulnerable in this case showed that on some level, Akito got like excited because Yuki was wanting to have a genuine connection or relationship building experience through this moment here.
Right.
And then Akito's like, oh my God, this feels amazing. Like,
yeah.
I like this.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Because brought this on, you know?
Because I feel like, so Akito, everything fell apart with him and Yuki because he had a breaking point and then he took it out on Yuki, right?
Yep.
And then once he starts lashing out at people, he then will try and keep them there because I'm your god.
It's a cycle.
Right, it's a cycle. It's a cycle, but the thing is that then it moves into a cycle as a shift from something that it was originally, where we have good connection and interactions, and then all of a sudden we don't. So now I need to force you. I need to play the power card to keep you here, right? Yeah. And this felt like it was potentially a reverting back to, I don't need to keep you here.
There's no power in this dynamic.
Right, there's no power. There's no power in this dynamic at all. And so I'm actually able to be genuinely invested in this. But then once Yuki turns and looks at him after he addresses Yuki, because he's like, what's going on here? I'm seeing something. And then he sees the look in his eyes. I think that's something where then Akito then basically gets triggered of the thinking back to whatever the situation is with Kureno or whatever that makes him then be afraid of being alone and
of being abandoned.
And that's why then that's the place from which he then plays the power card, right?
Right.
And so that's why he flips out here, because then all of a sudden the thing that he thought could have been this wonderful thing where, Yuki does want to be around me. I am not alone. Right. Then he sees that look where Yuki is not really saying this for the sake of Akito. No. He's saying this for the sake of himself.
Meaning, in some ways, Yuki has taken back the power over himself in the relationship, which means Akito doesn't have power over him.
And why would they take back the power unless it was so that they could then leave, right?
Yeah, I really like this picture that seems to be getting painted here of Akito being the one that has basically an obsessive, compulsive fear of being abandoned, basically. Because that sets up a really cool potential twist on the evil side of Akito, which is that Akito is a victim of some horrific abandonment by his parents, probably.
Sure.
That's my guess, and that's where Shigure kind of plays into this there.
Yep.
Is that Shigure like manipulated that in some way.
Exacerbated it. Did some fuckery. Yeah.
Did some fuckery in order to set up the way in which the curse will ultimately get broken. And it's probably maybe even something so that Akito plays in even more into the abandonment fear, and thus compulsively latches on to one person at a time.
Well, and as a slight side thing, but that's also why I think Akito is such an important main antagonist, and why Toru is such an important main character.
Because Toru has a similar thing with that.
She has a similar dread of being abandoned, right? Because she was alone, when her mother died. She was alone when she was camping out in the woods, So that's just a wonderful way for the character conflict to be built up along multiple avenues, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
But Kureno is crying in this bit here, so that is. That is something worth exploring. Maybe that's what the final episode is.
And Kureno
kind of does need a little bit more character focus, I would say.
I think so, because he has definitely not been the type to cry. Like from what we've seen so far,
emotionless.
Yeah, the most emotion that we've ever seen is when he was
happy.
When he was interacting with Uro.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that was so satisfying to see Momiji give
Momiji!
The CD,
yes,
or the DVD. Even though we know that he's going to do that. That's what he said he was going to do, right?
Yeah.
But,
show it, goddammit.
Yeah.
The Hattori bit, resolving basically the potential guilt that Hattori feels over not being there for Yuki in that moment where Yuki pleaded with him.
Don't erase the memories,
cool little callback there. It did feel like this is a classic structure of a
finale,
of a pre-finale kind of setup where you're lightly resolving a bunch of little conflicts, but also establishing and reminding the audience, if you will, of all the key relationships and conflicts that are present and not resolving some of them. Meaning that those ones are the ones that need to be, resolved at some point in the future, but might have the next bit of progression in the finale, since this is not a series finale we're coming up on a season finale. And a lot of this felt to me like also a setup for Shigure, because we saw him multiple times going to other characters and just kind of having little moments of like pushing.
Yeah.
And it was just like
making Toru and Kyo go to Kazuma's place for New Year's. Checking in with Hatsuharu as he heads out to see Rin. Yeah.
Stuff with Hattori. I really loved Ayame's
Ayame was
over the top doting
fantastic
brother here.
Yep.
I love Ayame so much, but I loved also there are all these moments where you can tell Ayame is in the background chewing up the scenery, taking all the spotlight, having the time of his life.
Yep.
And yet, like, the second anything is wrong with Yuki, anything is there.
Like even the idea that, when Yuki and Hattori are talking, right, you just know that, he's listening on the other side of the door. And then as soon as they even mention him, he's like, yes, you called.
Yeah.
It was just, that was wonderful.
Really, really fantastic stuff. I'm really excited about this direction with Machi, given that Yuki also, through this whole process, kind of meaningfully is like attentive or listens to Machi, because Machi doesn't speak much, but Machi gives a lot away by her body language and her like expressions. And thus I think Yuki is the kind of person that is almost primed to be be set up. How do I say this? Primed or set up isn't really the right word, but basically there's an intimacy they don't really share yet necessarily, but you can definitely feel like her pain, if you will, is very thinly like veiled. It's
especially for Yuki. Like
right. But the idea that she sees so much of their similarities, how much more so does Yuki, who's been on this journey, see the exact same thing times 2 from his perspective?
Because he's walked a lot of the similar path, right?
Right, which is why when he said, I would love to see the world through your eyes, like I wonder what that would be like that gives me such a picture of his conscientiousness on display, in that the best thing about Yuki is actually when he taps into his empathy and into his sensitive side that the
almost might seem Prince-like.
Exactly. It might seem Prince-like, but it's actually more of a blend of the things that he learned from Toru.
Sure.
And actually some of the forwardness of the prince. And then of course who he is in the midst of that as well. And that trifecta it was delightful.
And one of the things that I absolutely love is a specific bit of detail for how this dynamic is going. It would be very easy in this type of situation for Yuki to be the prince that is saving Machi, and then so it's natural that she would fall for him, but that doesn't necessarily make for a balanced relationship dynamic. And one of the things that I think is very important to remind ourselves of here, because Machi certainly isn't going to remember this, is the fact that she's actually come in clutch for Yuki before. So it's not just something where Yuki is predisposed to be able to see the pain that she's going through because he's gone through something similar. And then naturally he would have a lot of empathy towards her. But she has also done things to basically earn this kind of attention from Yuki in a sense. So she is not helpless. She is not powerless, right? She does have that agency. She does have personality to her, even if she can't think of a favorite color or food or restaurant or whatever, right?
It's kind of a thing of where, and they edited this wonderfully, where she was like, does the world need me? And then suddenly Yuki shows up and it's like, oh, Machi. And it's just like... And I see what you did there. That was good.
Like that's a very like straightforward, easy, effective way to show that, like, yes, here's someone who, you know,
who does need you,
who does need you.
Yeah.
But he really does need you. There was a point where he really did need you.
Yeah,
and you helped him, right? So it's not just the thing of the, oh, I know you, so therefore, yeah, that would really suck if you weren't around,
right?
You know, it's no, you specifically,
you,
yeah, you Machi, not just the person that's on the student council. So,
good shit.
Yeah.
Good shit. But yeah, y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the full-length timer version of this reaction, go check out the link in the description below. For our Patreon, you can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.